to another week of the Dicebearers podcast. I'm Chris, and of course I have with me Alexa. How are you today?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I am excited for our newest episode. So we are doing, of course, the Easterlings today.
Yes, we are. So let's jump straight into it with the model range for the Easterlings. What do you think of these models, Chris?
I think this is probably one of the most iconic of the evil factions outside of the Big Four. So obviously the Big Four, Rohan, Gondor, Mordor, Isengard. Take those four out of the equation. I think this is probably one of the most iconic model ranges, and I love them. They're stunning.
I think Eastlings have a really great aesthetic going. I think some of the models have aged in annoying ways, like the shields molded into them or things like that.
It's character, mate. Come on.
It's listen. But beyond that, I think that it doesn't actually affect the aesthetic of the models like in a negative way. It can just be a little bit annoying when painting, but when they're like fully painted up on the table, they look great. I agree.
Yeah, definitely. I think the old medals really are one of those models that really show their age, but like we talked about with Saladin with the Harad episode, not necessarily in a bad way, some of the medals.
I really like the Easterling metal cab. I wish I had some.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like they look like heavy in a way, in a good way, I think.
Yes.
In a way that like I wish I had some. So I'm gonna, someone wants me to send me some. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Why not? Maybe I'll include you on the episode. There you go. You can come join for free. It's a privilege to be here, I think. I had to pay to be here. It was a lot of money.
Yeah, imagine a dude who gives you free metal Easterling Kataphrakts not being part of the Easterling episode, though.
Well, listen, we can retroactively edit him in.
Yeah, can we?
You can just re-upload next week.
I didn't realize I was doing that much work.
Listen, that sounds like a you problem. But yes, I think they're also quite nice to paint. Pretty easy to paint, regardless of how you go. I painted mine non-metallic, and it was very easy and very quick. I think that it's a great way to paint them if you want to. Obviously, metallics are also really easy to do with them. They take great to, just even gold in a wash and maybe like a little bit of a highlight or a dry brush of something back up. That makes for a great looking army.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good mod.
I think the part that makes this army look so nice is it's a heavily armored faction with a lot of fabrics. It's two aesthetics that a lot of people really gravitate towards, that really elite heavy armored look as well as the fabric heavy look. And even better than that, for painters like myself, there's no faces. We don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, no eyes. I don't want to paint eyes.
Yes.
Alright, shall we hop into the list overview? Take it away with the strengths, Chris. What do we got?
So you have in this army list some of the best hero killing experts in the game, in my opinion. So almost all of their heroes, bar for one, is designed with the expectation of killing. And the way that they go about doing that, at their peak anyway, is by killing and executing heroes. You have a lot of use of things like strikes and special rules that complement fighting other heroes, as well as just high dice, high strength, high attacks. In addition to that, you have access to Khamul. In my opinion, he is probably the third best Ringwraith model you can bring in the entire game.
And depending on what you're bringing him for, arguably the best in terms of just killing power per point as far as Ringwraiths are concerned.
Yeah, and I think on top of that as well, you have cavalry that actually stay around and have a lot of staying power and can buff your heroes up whilst mounted with the same amount of staying power. Although there are some very big and clear weaknesses. Alexa, what are they?
Yeah, so you don't kill anything with your troops, realistically. They don't really have any way to up the killing power of their line, exclusive of their heroes. And part of that is there is no real buffs for your troops on your heroes. There's a small 3-inch banner on Amdur, which is pretty mediocre as far as, big legend heroes or valor heroes even buffing your troops goes. Your heroes, while they are very good at killing stuff, they're not exactly the toughest of the bunch. They're not super vulnerable, but they can be to things like magic. The Dragon Knights have no will to resist. Amdur is he a 3/3/1?
3/3/1.
So he does have the will, but he's one fate hero and only defense 6. That isn't great. I mean, it's not awful, not as bad as Saladin at D5, but it's not much. 1 point of defense isn't a big step up, really.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing when you look at the Easterling army is you want it to play like this big rank up pike block that does actually push through things with the troops like the heroes can, and that's just not how they play, and I think that throws a lot of people off.
Yeah, when you compare them to like the other big pike factions like Isengard or Fiefdoms can go to fight 5, Fiefdoms have 0 wants to wound across their whole army, Isengard's at strength 4, fight 4 base across everything.
Yeah.
Whereas Easterlings, well, they have some tricks, being able to bring shields on their pikes, for example, or being able to back away into ranks, which make them more survivable. Their pike block isn't very killy when compared to the other two, and is stuck at max fight 4 with a fairly expensive upgrade.
Yes, and I think that's the biggest catch with this list, is it's really expensive to bring pikes in the fight 4 block. And I think if you're trying to bring pikes into the list effectively and actually utilize the infantry side of it, you don't bring a lot of them, which means, you basically have to cherry pick where your high fight goes.
Exactly. Or you have to spend a lot of points and have a low model count, which is not great when you're so low damage output at only strength 3.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of plays into the weakness of the army, but also plays into its strength. It just means you want to use your warriors as the placeholders. They're going to be the 3-die shielding if you include the banner, and just holding things up for as long as they can. Their job is to die slowly enough for Amdur to get 10 kills through a game. And that's basically what their job is.
Yeah, and to kill 3 heroes.
Yes.
Get that money off that blood and glory and all that.
Yeah, exactly that, right? And so it's a blessing and it's a curse. But yeah.
And with that, we're going to take a quick break and then jump straight into the army list. The Easterling models receive +1 courage when their force is broken. Additionally, once per game in scenarios when a dice is rolled to see when the game ends, so long as there is at least one Easterling hero model alive on the battlefield, the Easterling player may choose to reroll the dice if the scenario ends before they wish it to. What do you think of this army bonus, Chris?
I have many thoughts about this army bonus. So let's break it into 2 parts. The +1 courage when you break, and then the reroll of the game end condition. The +1 courage when you broke, I find incredibly frustrating. I think it's a cute little nod to, in the books, no quarter was given, where they're talking about, the scenes where all the Eastlings fight to the last man and that sort of stuff. Their backs against the river. But just an army bonus that's Gondor after you lose half your army. It's just such a frustrating army bonus to have.
Especially when your troops are just Gondor, but without shield point.
Yeah, and it's
They get other things, but still.
It's just such a frustrating mimicry of Gondor, but just slightly worse. And I think all the infantry of this list kind of have that flaw with them.
But Chris, in half the scenarios, you get to reroll a dice maybe.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well, right? So with the reroll of the end condition, note you can only reroll it to keep the game going. You cannot use it to end the game early.
And I think there's also now a stipulation that you need at least 33% of your force to be Easterlings or something.
33% of the models in your force to have the Easterling.
That's in the FAQ/errata section.
Yes.
Basically, it means you just can't bring Amdur and no other guys to get the reroll if you wanted it.
So the actual issue was people bringing a Mordor force with Khamul on his own.
Yeah. But still, regardless, the point is that's not
it was to stop that. Yes. And so, it's a really cool idea, but I just don't think it was implemented as well. If I could change it to anything I wanted, I would actually flip the first part of it to say a +1 courage or even a +2 courage before you break, to represent the fact that they were really aggressive on the advance up north when they were actually besieging Erebor and that sort of stuff. And as soon as they heard news of Sauron's failings and inevitable defeat, they actually were very quick to rout, and it was a sally out that broke their force very quickly. So I would love to see that rule inverted almost, but hey.
Yeah, could be interesting.
Yes.
But regardless, jump into the first profile. Take it away, Chris, with Amdur, the Lord of Blades.
Yes, so Amdur is one of your 2 potential leaders, because for 130 points, you get the Man Easterling infantry hero of valor. So he's not a hero of legend. This army unfortunately lacks one of those. So what does he get for the privilege? He gets movement 6, fight 6, 4+ to shoot, although you won't use that. He's strength of 4, defense of 6, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, courage 5. His his might is 3, his will is 3, and his fate is only 1. He has, as his war gear, heavy armor, and carries a elven hand-and-a-half sword. So that's already, fight 6, with an elven blade, a really, really nice starting point. He has 2 heroic actions to complement that really well, in my opinion, that being Heroic Strike and Heroic Challenge. And I think Heroic Challenge is a phenomenal thing to put onto this model, and you get even more out of that because of his special rules. So he has a few special rules. The first one is Blood and Glory. Every time you kill an enemy model that is a hero or monster, you regain a point of might lost earlier in the battle. He has another rule called Unyielding Combat Stance, which basically means every time he is knocked to the ground by any means, on a 4+, he stays on his feet. He has a third special rule called Phalanx, which basically means as long as all models that are backing away from a combat have the Phalanx special rule, which is something almost every Easterling model in the game carries, all three models, up to three models, may be backing away. So he backs away and two models behind him can make way, instead of the usual just one. And his final rule is the Gleaming Horde. The Gleaming Horde is a rule that whilst he is mounted, and other models are mounted around him with this special rule, you can essentially gain the Shield Wall special rule. So your horse goes from a armored horse, which this model can buy for 15 points, by the way, goes from defense 5 to defense 6. Amdur himself goes from defense 6 to defense 7. So it's a nice, cute way of bringing his defense value up, which is good and it's handy and it's, it's something to help make those cavalry models and cavalry heroes harder to kill whilst they're closing the gap. I find when the combat actually hits, it's not as powerful, but that's okay. And he also has two very unique special rules to him. So Amdur's first unique rule is called the Herald of Victory. What this rule basically means is Amdur counts as a 3-inch banner to all Easterling models around him, including himself. If Amdur kills the enemy leader, however, and it has to be the leader of the enemy force, unfortunately, not just any hero, his range of the banner is increased to a 6-inch banner effect. Really nice rule. A 3-inch banner, awesome. Being able to bring that up to a 6-inch banner, even better. And he has one more special rule called the Lord of Blades. What this rule basically does is any model in a combat against Amdur, when they call a heroic strike, Amdur may declare a heroic strike as well. If Amdur, however, declares a heroic action first, he may then change his heroic action to a heroic strike. So I think that is a phenomenal rule to have, because it means if you go into a fight 5 hero with strike, you can call a combat. And if they decide to strike up against you, you can then copy that and strike with them. If you go into a fight 5 hero and they call a strike early, you don't even need to spend might, you just get the strike for free. If they don't spend it, you just get to kill the model. Basically, the only reason you wouldn't be getting a free point or a free change of might is into a fight 7 model. So he's a bit of a wordy profile, but I think he's a phenomenal choice to lead your army. Alexa, what are your thoughts?
I mean, as I said in the slide, he is the reason to play Easterlings. Like, he is the most appealing thing about this army, other than the best model in the game, which we'll get to later. Maybe controversial take, but we'll talk about it. Yeah, the Fight 6 and Elven Maid is very solid. It puts him above most heroes, especially at his price range. For only 130 points and 145 on a horse, Fight 6 Elven Maid is pretty solid at that points cost. Again, only one fate, it's fine. The free strikes are huge. It's so frustrating to deal with when you have like a Fight 5 hero-based army that he just gets the strike for free against you. Because there's nothing you can... If he charges a Fight 5 hero, you strike, he gets it for free. You don't strike, he's already higher than you.
Yeah.
And that's just really frustrating to deal with, especially combined with the Blood and Glory. It means that he is very heavily incentivized to just might in kills. He can just go for a 2-hand, use a might point to like confirm the 6 if he rolls a 6 and then -1 still 5. He can use a point of might to go back to a 6 and then gets 3+1 to wounds on his strikes.
Yes.
A lot of stuff he can do is thanks to his sort of combination. The combination of his rules are like greater than he is greater than the sum of his parts essentially, because they all complement really well what he does.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with this model. Like, the way his rules stack on top of each other just means he's such an impressive tool for dueling heroes or monsters. And I think when you look at models in the game that want to charge into a Troll Chieftain, he's amongst the first. And he does so really well and comfortably as well. And I love the way he can actually just challenge, powerful models like that. I think the only other thing to keep in mind with him is the tool that I use all the time, the Heroic Challenge. Now, I know a lot of people can sometimes struggle to get value out of a challenge. I think Heroic Challenge is one of the most oppressive rules in the game if you are using it well. And I think he is a wonderful model that really illustrates how you can use that well, because he has the quote-unquote safety of if you make a boo-boo while you're doing it, he can still call a strike, or even change his combat to something else if he absolutely needs to.
So, sorry, can he... Let's say I have my own hero, Valor, and Amdur charges me. He calls a challenge, I decline.
Yeah.
And then I call a strike. He can just strike for free.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I still lose the point of might.
Yes, but you've affected me with the challenge already because I've declined.
I think it needs an FAQ. As far as I understand, that is correct.
Because, yeah, I've already
Because the
declined
game has stopped. You accept or decline, then you apply and do something else.
Yeah, the effect of the challenge has activated. There's no more to it. It doesn't need to wait till the end of the turn to come into play. So
As far as I understand, yes, there could be an FAQ that I've
I don't
missed somewhere.
think there is. I'll have a look through, but I think that makes sense. The way that works, I think,
Yes.
flows in a way that makes sense to me, at least.
And so suddenly, this model just absolutely tanks when it goes into any sort of hero. Like, it goes into it and just says, it doesn't matter what my opponent is doing, because I'm going to get something out of it. I'm either a hero that's going to stall you out for up to 3 turns, or I'm a hero that's about to kill you and keep on climbing straight through the rest of your ranks, going for the next hero, the next hero, the next hero. And you'll see this as a trend with Easterlings, is hero hunting is the name of the game. If you are unfortunate enough to be playing the Wraiths of Dol Guldur into a list like this...
Hey, look, I'll be honest with you. I don't think your Amdur's getting to me.
I mean, you do have to deal with magic, that is true.
You're all dismounting. I don't know how to tell you this.
But the scary part of if Amdur gets to start up close, if you get to play a game like Contest or something like that, where you get that kill lead started and you're going into a lot of heroes, even armies like I've seen an Amdur and a couple of Dragonites go into a Grey Company list.
Oh, that's all. That's actually a lot worse.
It was
the Grey Company does actually mean something.
Yes, I believe off the top of my head, it was 26 points of might spent on the Easterling side.
I mean, you just go in with 3 Dragonites, they all call combats, they all kill a guy.
Yes, and that's exactly what they did, right? And so they would charge 2v1s, they all call combats, and they just use points of might to win the fights or get wounds because they're getting them all back
That's
anyway.
awful, I hate it.
It was horrific. It was one of the shortest games I saw. It was one of the most impressive games I saw.
What we're saying is Eastlings are really good against Grey Company.
Yes, but there was one more hero valor on this list that is also phenomenal for its price. Alexa, who is it?
It is the one, the only Khamul the Easterling. So, for 120 points base, you get a Spirit Ringwraith Easterling, important, Mordor Infantry Hero of Valor. He comes with a move of 6, a fight of 5, strength of 4, defense of 8, like all Ringwraiths, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6, 2 might, 12 will, 2 fate. So a relatively low will pool to start with, but not really. We'll get into that in a moment. He comes with heavy armor and a sword. He actually has 3 heroic actions, which is neat. He gets heroic channeling, they call it wraiths, but he also gets strike and challenge. Which is he the only named wraith with unique actions?
Other than the Witch King?
Yes. Which is huge. It's like, okay. For options, he gets the armored fell beast for 70, the fell beast for 50, the armored horse for 15, and a normal horse for 10. He comes with Harbinger of Evil, Terror, and Will of Evil. So standard Ringwraith stuff.
Yep.
What makes Khamul special is Essence Leech. If Khamul makes a strike against an enemy model which causes a wound, he instantly regains a single point of will spent earlier in the battle for each wound caused, unless the wound is saved by a point of fate or similar rule. This cannot take him back above 12, but it basically means that he can always get up some more will to get some casts going. Additionally, Khamul may expend a single point of will at the start of the fight phase before heroic actions are declared to increase either his fight, strength, or attacks by 1 for the remainder of that fight phase. Note that if he is mounted, Khamul will only ever increase his own fight, strength, or attacks, not those possessed by his mount. So this basically means you can't give your fell beast 3 attacks, you can't give your fell beast strength 7, but you can take yourself to fight 6 on a fell beast, which is huge. We talked a lot about how important fight 6 is, and if you, with all those fight 5 heroes, like you just hit a transfix and you spend 1 point of will to go after fight 6, and you just take him out.
Yes.
For magical powers, he is a mediocre caster, so not good. Drink Courage 3+, Transfix 4+, Compel 5+, Instill Fear 5+, Sap Will 5+, and Black Dart 6+. In my opinion, he's basically only ever casting Transfixes. Maybe the occasional, like 3 dice Compel. He is the kind of character who can afford to go for 3 dice spell casts, because he can go in and, especially on a Fell Beast, he goes into 2 guys, he kills them, pretty comfortably, regain some of that will.
Yeah.
Even on a horse, if you're fighting a lower defense army, he can pretty reliably take 2 guys out, get back all that will. Or if he goes into a hero and he goes for 3 wounds on them, that's 3 will that he can get back. There's a lot of potential to get high dice number spellcasts early and then regain that to keep him in the fights later.
Definitely, yes. There was one caveat to his rule, however. So with Essence Leech, you cannot regain points of will if you use a monstrous action. So no brutal power attacks at all will regain will if you're mounted on a Fell Beast. That's the one caveat to that rule.
Yes, but your normal strikes on the Fell Beast will.
Yes. So if you just slap into something, knock it prone, you'll get your 6 dice at them. If you manage to get 4 wounds down by just rolling normally at them, you can regain 4 points of will. So it can be really powerful still. Just be aware if you rend or hurl, you're not going to get any will back off things like that.
But what do you think, Chris?
I think this model is phenomenal to have in an Easterlings list. I think if your list doesn't have one of those 2 heroes leading it, you've probably made a mistake in list building.
Not necessarily, probably. I mean, Khamul, they're both quite cheap. That's the thing. They're only, Khamul, even on a horse, is just 130.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, why not? Like, just do it. Amdur is, 145 on the armored horse. So that's not that expensive either.
And, I used to play games at 300 points all the time with Amdur and a full warband. And it was comfortable to bring a full warband because he counted as a banner for himself, didn't need to drop points on that. It meant I could bring 15 models and have quite a few of them upgraded quite nicely as well.
Yeah, it's a solid way to do it. I do think Khamul is excellent. The question for him is, and when you're list building, it's a pretty important question for you, is do you bring him on the Fell Beast or on the horse? I think both are valid options. The sort of downside, quote unquote, of bringing him on a Fell Beast is there are times when you're heavily encouraged to use those brutal power attacks, especially the hurl. A hurl down the line is really big. But the thing is, when you're using those, you're not getting value out of your Essence Leech.
Yes.
Whereas when you're on a horse, you're always making normal strikes. You can, if you want extra attacks, you can use a point of will on your attacks to try to clear out chaff. There's a bit more flexibility for less points. Well, no, not more flexibility, but because he's less points, you don't need to get as much out of him as you do when you bring him on the Fell Beast.
However, in saying that, I think, and because this army, relatively speaking, will often be quite elite in nature and want to really crunch troops and, get through those troops quickly so they can access the heroes, thin out the enemy's numbers, get them close to the breaking right as all the heroes are starting to drop so they don't have anything for those standfast. That's when it's super, super important to have Khamul on that Fell Beast. Because it means that your opponent wants to adopt a, stopping flyers which in the backline style of formation, leaving 1 or 2 models sporadically spread out to stop him getting in. And suddenly, that's models that aren't in the front rank. That's models that aren't trying to help protect heroes. Suddenly, that, 38 model opposing force only actually has 33 in the front ranks. And when Amdur comes in on one side, Khamul comes in on the other, a Dragon Knight comes in dead center, your opponent is starting to really wear thin that front line because they're constantly scared about the Khamul jumping the lines. And I think that's what makes the Fell Beast such a powerful tool, as well as obviously being a monster and all the perks you get out of that, but just the access to the backline and the fear that it just consumes your opponent when you explain the way wing rates work on Fell Beasts. I think that's what really sells them on the Fell Beast.
Yeah, I generally think that it's like a choice that you do. I don't think that the Fell Beast is like an auto include on him, as good as it is on him. The upsides of a horse are you get a smaller base, obviously the lower cost. The main downside is the lack of strength 6 and 1 less attack.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of points to get that. And so, again, it comes down to how you're intending to play the list.
Yeah.
If you're intending to play entirely build around your heroes, then probably bring him on the Fell Beast. If you want to bring some more troops and play around those, which you can do if you go for an Acolyte heavy build, which I'll be talking about, I think that bringing him on a horse is actually a very solid option because it lets you keep a relatively high model count despite being quite elite, while having a very strong ring wraith who can play for a long game, which most of the other ring wraiths can't.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? It's a difference of 40 points. Like, 40 points doesn't always seem like a huge amount, but when it comes to list building and fitting in those final pieces, it really can be quite big. Like, especially in this army, I always look at an Easterling's army starting 40 points less than whatever the cap is, because you bring a war drum and you bring a banner. And so 40 points can be that difference, right? Sometimes it's huge, sometimes it's not. It's something to think about.
Yeah, now on to our next profile, a much cheaper one. Take it away, Chris, with the Dragon Knight.
Yes, so the Dragon Knight. I think this is my favorite of the not named heroes in this list. So for 65 points, you get a man, Easterling, hero, infantry, and he is a minor hero. So a slight downside in that he is a minor hero, but in a moment when we look at the way his rules work, it's actually not a terrible thing having such small warbands with them. For his stats, he is movement 6, he's fight 5, so already that's really good on minor hero. Fight 5 is really good. He is strength of 4, he's defense of 6, he has 3 attacks and 2 wounds, and he's courage 4. His might, will, and fate is 0 might, 2 will, other way around. 2 might, 0 will, and 0 fate. So he is exceedingly vulnerable on the defense, but with 2 points of might, starting in the kit on a 65-point minor hero, he is phenomenal. He has heavy armor and 2 swords, so he's shadow resistance, which is phenomenal. He has a singular unique heroic action, that being heroic strike, and his war gear options is an armored horse for 15 points. Now, his special rules, and this is where I love reading about this model. He has a few of them. So he has Blood and Glory, regaining lost points of might throughout the course of the game. Phenomenal. Unyielding combat stance, doesn't fall over. Phenomenal. He has Phalanx, can back away with 2 models and him. Phenomenal. Gleaming Horde, he's now defense 7 when he's sprinting at you at Mach 5. Phenomenal. He has 2 other rules that are also phenomenal.
Wait, so, what is not phenomenal?
Oh, actually, you're right.
What is the downside? Because I don't know what to tell you.
It's a phenomenal downside. It helps you with list building. The one that's good, though, is it's called Shield of Blades. What this means is the Dragon Knights can shield whilst armed with 2 swords. So as long as you're resisting those shadows with that 0 will of yours, and you have 2 swords in your hand, you can use the shielding special rule. Obviously, you can't do that mounted, but whilst you dismount, being able to 6 dice just slow something down off fight 5, whilst it's not optimal to how you want the model played, is something you can do. The other rule with this model is Knight of the Dragon Cult. What this means is there's an upgrade for our troops called Black Dragons. We'll get to that more as we dive into the profile, but Dragon Knights may only lead Easterling models who have that upgrade. So yes, it is outright a downside to bring the profile, but everything about this model other than that just screams aggression, screams hero killing. It is awesome. What are your thoughts on this model?
Yeah, they're okay. No, they are very good at what they do. I definitely think this is a list that is one of the few lists where hero hammering with non-named heroes is a viable option because of these guys. Because having strike on a non-named hero with 3 attacks, like the profile itself is just a very solid profile for 80 points mounted. Like it just brings a lot of damage. Sadly, it doesn't have like anything like a lance, which would be good, but the fact that you can use Blood and Glory to regain your might means you're more encouraged to pop might on wound rolls to go for kills, and just, use rolling 3 dice. You just go for 6, 8 dice to wound rolls if you hit an infantry hero and knock them prone. That's just a lot of killing power bringing in with these guys.
It really is, and that's the thing that makes these guys so scary. Like, for 80 points, you get them on a horse with the potential of 8 dice going for kills. Obviously, 4 dice winning the fights if it's an infantry model, but 8 dice going for that coup de grace at strength 4 with 1 or 2 might points behind it most of the time. Like, these guys are the perfect models at just sniping out and just chain killing captains or any model stuck at fight 5 without strike.
Utility heroes are their favorite prey.
Yes.
Like march carriers, things like a Balin, like the kids. Like those are if these guys can get into those, they're just getting value like crazy.
Yes. Like I said, I've seen models just absolutely melt to these guys before. The Grey Company was obviously one of the most horrific examples of a rule being exploited to the max, but they can still do that with other armies. I've seen these models go into mortar hordes, where it's, the unnamed, even just the named, like 3 or 4 named captains with strike, like Zadush, Gorebag, models like that, and they just tap into them, go for the strike off, because every time the Easterling Dragon Knight wins, there's a dead orc and they got opponent might back. Every time they lose, they might lose their horse.
They're also just very efficient troop killers for their point cost. Like, they can go in and just take 2 guys every turn pretty comfortably for only 80 points.
Yeah.
And that's a very, or like, go into 2, call hero combat, go into 2, take 4 guys in 1 turn, and then maybe look for, a breakthrough into a hero on the next turn. That's the kind of things you can do with them, or, call, because you can regain your might on them. It means you can be very aggressive with how you spend it in the combat phases.
Definitely. I think the one caveat to that, though, is I see some people, when they see rules like Blood and Glory, they go, oh, I can just throw might away. You still need to be careful with their might, especially with that being the only heroic resource these models have. They don't have will, they don't have fate, they don't have things to stop them feeling it. And so, if you struggle playing with heroes that actually need to be played a bit more aggressively and that sort of stuff, perhaps these aren't the best models to open into an Easterling's armies with. I think if you're really someone who wants to get a feel for how to absolutely dominate the aggression side of a game, though, these are the perfect starting point.
Yeah, these guys, they're tricky to use. They're probably the hardest model in this army to use. Like, to an extent, Amdur kind of pilots himself. Fight 5 dudes and just kill them. Yeah. But these guys, it's a lot trickier because they're very vulnerable, even to those fight 5 dudes. Because in a strike-off, like, they could easily just get taken out if they take one bad fight or one even an unlucky fight. You need to kind of use them, but have a contingency on if they fail. Yeah. But you can do that because they are quite cheap. And if they go, like, if you have 2 of them and one fails and one goes off, the one that goes off will pay for the one who failed.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, 80 points is not a significant investment in a 750 point match play game. And you can afford to bring 2 of them. Like, it's comfortable to pay 160 points for 2 of these profiles that just run one on either side of Amdur. Or you double down on them on one flank and on the other. Or you do, like, you can really spread out how powerful one side of your force or the other wants to be by tripling down on heroes, by doing heroes spread out nicely, by doing all your heroes in one side. It really forces tempo. And as we'll see later on this list, the way you can maneuver just means that the Easterling army always picks the fighting grounds, basically, because they are so insanely quick that your opponent often doesn't get a chance to engage in the shooting wars with you. They often don't get chances to move into those defensive blocks unless they're lucky enough to deploy on them. There's very, very, very little, unfortunately, you can do to stop that happening if the Easterling player has the right tools to actually do that.
And now onto one of those tools. What a great segue that is. The Easterling Captain. So for 50 points, cheapo, you can get a man Easterling infantry hero of fortitude with a move of 6, a fight of 4, a strength of 4, defense of 6, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, and courage 4. 2 might, a 1 will, 1 fate, pretty standard captain, heavy armor, and an Easterling glaive. The Easterling glaive is a 1.5-hand axe, pretty neat weapon. Comes with the heroic action of march, like all captains do. He can swap his glaive for an armored horse and sword. I kind of wish he could just keep the glaive, I'll be honest, on the horse. That'd be kind of sick. I don't know why he can't. It's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
It can also bring a bow or a shield. I just bring the shield, I think. He goes to D7. D7 captain's good, especially on the horse. With 2 other guys, he can go up to D8. That's pretty tanky. He comes with Phalanx and the Gleaming Horde, so it's the standard rule across the whole army. So, what do we think of this captain?
I think that this captain is a really nicely pointed captain. There's one thing that I'd say I'm quite upset about is that the captain doesn't have like a Black Dragon style upgrade or something like that. Like, I understand the Dragon Knights are meant to be that for the hero side of things, but it seems a bit weird having a captain the same fight as some of your troop choices and things like that. It's just one of those weird ones. But other than that, I think keep him on foot, 55 points with the bow, phenomenal. 55 points with the shield. Only having 10 points for the armored horse. Although you drop that glaive, I actually think it's really, really cheap.
Oh, I didn't notice it was actually 10 points. It's actually a neat little thing. You save 5 points.
So 65 points gets you a defense 7 captain.
Yeah, no, that's very good. I don't think he's bad. Personally, the fact you can bring a drum really cheap in this list kind of reduces his value to me, depending on the list you're running. We'll talk about a list later where you go zoom.
Yes,
thanks to him. And he can be very good for doing that. That being said, unless you're doing very specific things, I think this is a list that doesn't actually need to bring a March hero as much as others do because of access to that drum for so cheap.
Yeah, he is your only March carrier. That is something to keep in mind as well. And having quite low killing pressure, with the lower fight value only being fight 4, which, to be honest, is going to be the same fight as quite a lot of your opponent's baseline troops. And not having anything fancy like a lance or anything like that when mounted just means his killing power will unfortunately be quite low.
Yeah, he might actually be more consistent on foot at killing stuff because he can two-handed pierce.
Yes.
With 2 pikes, it's actually not bad killing power, especially if you can set up a trap for him or getting him with a friendly hero. There's some play to him. I just don't think he's not the best captain in the game. But again, move 20, pretty funny.
Yes. And I think the thing that makes him good is the fact that you can just use him as a point of might, right?
Or a blocker, even.
Yes.
I think he is a very good blocking hero. 8 on a horse if he gets the shield wall going with some other guys. Just chuck him into whatever and he won't die. Yeah. Even on foot, just, guy with a shield. The kind of shame is that for 15 points more, you could do that with a Dragon Knight at 3 attacks, shielding for 6 at 5/5.
Yes, and I think that's the real secret that makes these guys not as good. Obviously, if you're not playing a lot of the Black Dragon upgrades, he's very good at just bringing troops cheaply, but there is another hero that can also do that, and that hero is called the Easterling War Priest. So the Easterling War Priest is 60 points. He is a man, Easterling, hero infantry, hero fortitude. The War Priest has a movement of 6, his fight of 3, which is unfortunately laughable, 4+ shoot value, strength of 3, quite unfortunate as well, defense of 5, 1 attack, 2 wounds, courage of 4. He has 1 might, 3 will, and 1 fate. His war gear is heavy armor and an Easterling battle stave. The battle stave can be used as a spear or a 2-handed axe. So the classic, priest style caster, the what are they? The shamans, the wind something? Stormcallers, that's what they're called for elves. It's that sort of profile. Has the spear option and can also use as a 2-handed axe in a pinch. He has, the only heroic action he has is channeling. He can bring an armored horse for 15 points, but where he really shines is his magical powers. So he has 2 of them, both of which with a 6-inch range. On a 2+, he can bring Blade Wrath. Phenomenal. 2+ Blade Wrath is insane.
What does Blade Wrath do, Chris?
It bumps your strength up. It is insane.
So on strength 6, and then channeled is strength 8, I think?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Which is pretty solid. So it's basically our lance buff.
Yes.
+2 strength. So you put that on Amdur and he goes poof, or whatever you're killing, or on a Dragon Knight.
And suddenly they go from a killy hero to a really killy hero.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it super scary is putting Blade Wraths onto Amdur. So Amdur can 2-hand with an Elven Blade, and so he's winning the fights most of the time. He's getting a free strike if the opponent has it, and he's going to 2-hand. And he uses his point of might, which he hasn't spent yet, to bump his roll of a 6, which dropped to a 5 because he 2-handed, back to a 6. Suddenly, you have a 2-handed model at strength 6.
Effective strength 8, or if you channel, effective strength 10.
It's just insane for killing power, right? And if you're like, oh man, I really hope I flash kill this Aragon, your opponent suddenly goes, oh man, I really hope he doesn't roll anything but 1s, because that's what he needs to kill me right now. It's just so brutal watching that happen. He obviously does have as well Fury, which is the, I think, stock standard style of thing that you'd expect coming out of a priest shaman-y sort of model. And that is cast on a 3+. So it's only Easterling models, but it is all Easterling models. So interestingly enough, will actually help Khamul as well.
Yeah, you can charge those Terra models that he's really scared of.
Yeah, or, I mean, the 6-up as well.
If you channel
it, right?
I don't think you channel it very often, personally. I think that saving that for a channeled Blade Wrath when you really want to end someone...
I think even just making sure the Blade Wrath happens
That's
in the first place.
Depending on what you're going against, depending on the defense value of what you're hitting. If you're hitting like a D8 or a D9 even hero, maybe then the channeled Blade Wrath comes out.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Yeah,
but on the D6 or D or whatever heroes, just going for a 2+ and then being like, oh no, I rolled a 1. This is an important turn, and just using the might for that.
Yes.
And then, if you've already killed all the big targets you need to kill, it's getting into the end game, you're about to break, chuck a Fury down on a 3+.
Yeah. Well, but what about the army bonus?
Listen, Fearless is better than Courage 4. Objective statement right there.
Yeah, sometimes true.
Especially if you're It's most impactful in games when you're playing against Terra, Will
Yeah.
of Evil. What's it called? Ancient. No, I've blanked. What's the rule called? The
Harbinger?
Terra- Harbinger of Evil. That's the
Ancient
one.
Evil is the one
Ancient
that,
Evil
like,
is the 18-inch one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're playing against Ancient Evil or Harbinger of Evil, that's when you pop the Fury down.
yeah. And I think in those niche matchups, you can still go for. I would be quite risky with it. I think I'd go for the 1 dice Fury and hope I have 2 Blade Wraths for later in the game, and just be really mindful of when I drop that last Blade Wrath, because it will drop the Fury as well.
Yeah.
But having those tools there, having those possible 3 spellcasts, I think is an important thing to have on this model. And additionally, he's still a hero of Fortitude. He's one of the only Shamani priest style models that isn't a minor hero.
The fact that he's a hero of Fortitude, I think, is actually like the biggest boon to him as an addition to your list.
Yes.
Because we've talked about how the captain doesn't really fit into the list in a way because of Dragon Knights outshining them. Well, this guy has a completely different role. And the fact that he has a different role means that there's a reason to bring him.
Yes. He is a little bit more expensive than you'd expect. He's actually more expensive than the captain, which I find quite interesting.
Because he hits hard. Two-handed axe.
I was going to say, but like, if he, like, non-jokingly...
Him and Amdur go into someone, he piercing strike 2 hands.
Yeah. I've won a game because I used the War Priest that Blade Wrathed himself and then 2-hand axe someone. Like, it was
That's
probably...
upsetting. That's upsetting.
Yeah,
I don't want
and,
to talk
like,
to you anymore.
so it was a 1 dice attack into a Theoden, and I win the fight with the 2-hand debuff because I rolled a 5, which turned to a 4.
He
My
rolled like
opponent
a
cold
3.
rolled for 3 high. We both had 1 point of might left, so we both mighted up to match each other, and then I just clapped him, and he was so upset because he lost the game.
Most upsetting is losing my Marshal to a banner.
Yeah, and the best part was, so the Theoden had 1 wound, 1 fate left. He rolled a 3 on his fate and couldn't
Might it
because he spent the might earlier.
Absolute disaster.
And that was the turning point
What
of
an
the game.
absolute disaster. Alright, well listen, that's depressing. Let's move on to something else depressing.
Oh, I love it.
With the Easterling Warrior profile. It's not as depressing as that, but it's close. I'm kidding.
Is it?
No,
Okay.
they're fine. They're fine.
Tell me what it does.
Okay, so for 7 points, you get a Gondorian. That is to say, move 6, fight value of 3 with a shoot value of 4+, strength of 3, defense of 5, 1 attack, 1 wound, and courage 3. They come with heavy armor and a sword or dagger. They can get a banner, a pike, a shield, or a bow. Or, for 2 points, the Black Dragon upgrade. So what does being a Black Dragon do for you? Well, for 1, lets you go with the Black Dragon Knights.
Yes.
So, neat. What else do we get? Well, we get fight value of 4 and a courage value of 4. Cool, so for 9 points, we can be an elf, but with 1 less fight.
Yep.
Great. What else do we get? Phalanx! Phalanx is actually a really good rule. Easterling models may use pikes and shields at the same time without penalty. Furthermore, should an Easterling model on foot with this special rule lose a dual roll, up to 2 other models that also have the Phalanx special rule can make way instead of 1. This is actually a really nice rule. It makes using a pike block a lot more user-friendly, let's say. It can be tricky not trapping yourself on your own pikes when you're running normal pike walls like Urukai or Fiefdoms. There are ways to deal with it with your positioning, but not having to deal with it at all just gives you more options on how you set up your line.
Yeah, and I think when you have like a gridlock style pike line that your opponent has priority fighting against, they'll often start in the middle of the pike block so that you don't have ways to negate the trapping yourself in bubbles and that sort of stuff. Easterling Warriors can negate that with the Phalanx special rule, basically. It is a handy special rule. It's not amazing, but it's there. It means that your heroes don't get trapped at the front of your lines when your Dragon Knights dismount. You can do the 5 dice, 6 with a banner, still fighting properly and not be worried about trapping them. You can do cute things like that.
My one wish was that let you carry a bow and pike.
But yeah,
Bow and pike. That frustrated me. I was like, oh, how good! I don't have to. I got one-handed pikes, but it's not one-handed pikes. You can carry a pike and a shield without penalty, which is great compared to something like Urukai, which can't do that.
But Urukai are fight 4, strength 4 base.
Yes, for the same points.
Yeah. No, they're 1 point cheaper.
No, they are.
Yeah. Because they're...
No, they're 9 points.
No, they're both 10 points with a pike. Yep.
Yeah. The unfortunate truth for Eastlings is that when you get the Black Dragon upgrade, your comparable 9-point models are better than you still.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that makes it quite hard. I think if the Black Dragon upgrade was 1 point, I think it'd be a much nicer rule. I understand the way it's been pointed as saying it's 1 point for Courage 4, 1 point for Fight 4. I don't think Courage 4 is something that should have been pointed at 1 point on
It is
this
less
profile.
valuable than Courage 2 to 3. We've talked about this a few times.
Yeah.
That 2 to 3 is the biggest breakpoint, 3 to 4 is slightly smaller. It is still a big one, especially with Harbinger of Evil, but you have Fury, so you don't even care that much.
Yes, I was going to say exactly that, right? With Fury on the table, like, you don't care, quote unquote, about the courage value. And yes, okay, if you're playing into an Harbinger style list, an Ancient Evil list, whatever, like, yes, staying at courage 3 is huge. But I don't think 2 points for every single model is what you
Well,
do.
the way you can do this, and you should do this most likely, is to spread your Black Dragons out across your pipeline in the back and keep them safe.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay for everyone to be a Black Dragon. And that
Yeah.
sort of cheating your points to get Fight 4 across the line, even though you're not paying for it on every model, is kind of neat. The problem is that other lists like Gondor, who have a very similar baseline profile, do it better. And that's why we focus on the heroes so much in this list, because these troops don't carry you in the same way they can, even in like a Gondor. Because in Gondor, you've got a lot of ways to buff them. They're not going to get killed, but they're going to be able to get to Fight 5, which is really big. They're going to have, 6-inch banner from Boromir or whatever. They're going to have Aragon, even 6-inch banner in them. So these guys are here to just not die for a while.
Yeah, I think the one saving grace of this profile, though, is it is a self-contained buff. It's a one-off purchase in list building, and you'll stay on the whole game. You don't have to keep yourself within 6 inches of the Boromir. And you don't have to pay the tax of a 215-point Boromir to really bring him at to bring the Gondorians at the fight 5, right?
Exactly. There are like upsides, but the fact that you can't choose to buff them is the issue.
Yeah.
Is that they feel like a profile that's meant to have some sort of buffs from within the list that don't, which is unfortunate. Like I said, they're not bad, especially with pikes and setting up a pike block. They can be quite effective fighting in that way, but they could also just not. There are a lot of situations where they don't feel quite right. They are decent bowmen for Evil. Evil doesn't tend to have great shots, so being a 4+ shoot is good. We talked about all the upsides of shooting into combat a couple times, and having access to that is nice. But being a defense 6 also makes it harder to kill yourself. Which one of the main upsides of killing yourself is to stop those big heroes chunking through a list like this, a D6 line,
Yeah.
So, ups and downs on that, but worth bringing a few bows just to shoot into combats and try to dismount an idiot so that then Amdur can go in with the Blade Drop and kill them.
100%. I think the way I view this profile and the next profile is basically they are the cheerleaders to the heroes of this list.
I'll take it away with our mounted cheerleaders, Chris.
Yes, so we have the Easterling Kataphrakts. A very unique spelling of the word, but hey, that's completely fine there.
It's copyrightable.
Yeah, I think that must be it. It just must be so they can copyright it. Anyway, for 14 points, you get a man, Easterling Cavalry Warrior. They are movement 6, but obviously 10 because they're mounted on a horse. They have fight value of 3 with a 4+ shoot. Their strength of 3, defense of 6, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 3. Their heavy armor, shield, sword, and armored horse is the war gear. So they're literally a Easterling Warrior with a shield and the armored horse built into the kit. Now, this is where they get really interesting because they have 3 options as war gear upgrades. So the first one is the banner, 25 points. Amazing. They have an Easterling War Drum for 15 points. So for those who don't know what the war drums do, so it will say war drum and then brackets and a keyword. For example, in this army, it says war drums in brackets Easterling. Any model that carries the Easterling's keyword that is within 12 inches of this model gets essentially the benefits of a march, but it can stack with a march. What that means is you sound a war drum before any actions are called each turn, and then you can march with your captain on top of that. So your mounted models can move 20 inches in a single turn. It is crazy to think how quick they can
Zoom indeed.
It means your infantry can move suddenly 9 inches a turn. You have the permanent...
12, if you march.
If you
Up to
march 12 inches, right? You can, quote-unquote, for free, move 9 inches a turn. That's the sort of stuff Aragon, Mighty Heroes, so
Yeah, and this is why I was talking about with the march not being as essential in a captain, because you can just bring this dude on for, only 29 points, and after you've marched in, you just chuck him in as a normal Cataphract.
Exactly. And you don't even suffer penalty for the drum as well, which is nice. You also get the Black Dragon upgrade for 2 points. And you have, of course, 2 special rules. Phalanx, which is the back away and the extra rank, and the Gleaming Horde. So this is the first time we actually see the wording of this rule. And it says, the models gain the shield wall special rule whilst they remain mounted, even though they are not on foot. The defense the +1 defense bonus is applied to both the rider and the steed. Hero models with a special rule do not need to have a shield to benefit from this rule. That is what makes Amdur allowed to get defense 7. That is what makes the Dragon Knights allowed to be defense 7 as well.
And your Easterling Captain D8.
And yes, D8 on the captain. Now,
So this is neat. I like it a lot. The thing that's most interesting about it is how it interacts with shooting. So you got a D6, which means that Elven shooting is now wounding on 6s.
yeah.
Crossbows are still 5s, but crossbows are very rare across the game.
Also, the crossbows are wounding you on 6s if the shot goes
If they hit your rider, yes. So it's giving you against at least, and then also normal arrows are 6s, 4s.
Yes.
On your riders.
So every single ranged weapon in the game that can be bought on an infantry model is actually suffering when it's
Against
shooting
this.
at this profile in some degree.
Yes. So I personally like the idea of just bringing 2 of these guys alongside, Amdur, and they just sort of walk around a little posse until he gets into combat.
Yes.
Even if you're hiding him behind your guys, just someone taking pot shots at him can be risky, and you just reduce the odds of them actually doing something.
Yeah, I think the one frustrating thing about this rule is shield wall is incredibly hard to maintain for cavalry models in combat. Because you have to keep the little triangle going, or you have to have just a gigantic wall of just Gleaming Horde style models, and those 40 mil bases will be outnumbered in the fights. They will be bogged down, they will be crunched down slowly. Yes, these guys have incredible staying power because they're a high defense cavalry model, and they have an armored horse as well. They're akin to the Lothlorien cavalry, just much, much cheaper for the privilege. But they really do lack any significant damage, and so feel a bit lackluster when charging in alongside the heroes. But at the same time, they don't want to just stand behind the heroes, because that's when the heroes get put into the 7v1s.
Yeah, the issue is that when you compare them to something like just a Gondorian cavalry model with a lance, and you're like, cool, so you're just on a +1 to wound compared to me on the turn that matters.
Yes.
And it's just like, they're the same points, right? 13 for Gondorian base, 14 with a lance?
No, it's 14 with a shield. They're 13 base.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, they're the same points, literally.
Yes. Like, you're literally trading a lance for an armored horse.
Which is not a good trade, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Armored horses are nice, but lances are nice. Like,
Yeah.
like just the difference in killing power on a lance compared to just against some things a +1 to wound. The main thing is strength 2 shooting.
Yes.
But the fact you have Gleaming Horde already kind of negates that.
Yeah,
Like, if you just had, I mean, obviously it wouldn't make sense to unarmored horses to have Gleaming Horde, but it just doesn't end up working out to be that impactful compared to what a lance gives.
And it's just, like I said a few times now, it's just too hard to maintain, unfortunately.
That too. In combat, it's just like...
Yes. It means that whilst you're flying up the board with, a bunch of cavalry and that sort of stuff with either a captain or a war drum around, you are, relatively speaking, impervious to the majority of bow fire coming at you at strength 2. But it just means that you really do struggle to keep that defensive buff going long term when you're actually in the combat phases. And especially after the first probably 3 turns, there's just no way you're going to keep that rule, unfortunately.
So bring axes?
Tell
us about axes. When we get to the list?
Yes. So there's a list I've written which has a bunch of axes in it. I'd love to explain why that's a really good choice when we get to that.
All right, but before we get there, we have one more profile, a new shiny profile. A fun profile, I'd say. Dragon called Acolyte. So first thing, they're not black dragons for some reason. It's probably going to get FAQ changed, so you can actually bring them with your Dragon Knights. It's kind of weird. But the Dragon called Acolyte, for 11 points, you get a man Easterling Infantry Warrior with a move of 6, a fight value of 4, strength of 3, defense of 4, 2 attacks, 1 wound, and courage 4. He comes with armor, throwing daggers, and 2 swords. He gets the unyielding combat stance, so he doesn't get knocked prone. Excellent. And supreme agility. A model with this rule gains a bonus of +2 to jump, leap, and climb tests. Neat. Additionally, a model with this special rule automatically pass all in the way test to strike a model that is defending a barrier or doorway. Love it. I really like these guys. A lot of people were kind of down on them, saying they were too expensive, but I think for what you're getting, 11 points is where they exist realistically.
Yeah.
10 points, just like when you compare them to the other 2 attack models that are similar to them, so the main ones would be the Watchers of Kana and the Corsair Reaver, you're getting basically for +2 points, you're getting throwing weapons and +1 defense, and also unyielding combat stance and supreme agility, which kind of match up to the abilities that the Reaver and the Watcher of Kana get, because they both have a bunch of text as well.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you're looking at for this profile. But what this profile does is it means you don't need to bring Black Dragons on your other guys.
Yes, and that's the critical thing.
Because he's reasonably priced for being Fight 4, Courage 4. Well, they're not.
Yeah.
And that's the main difference. And that's why I think they're actually really, really good. And I like them a lot.
Yes. So suddenly this means that your pike block becomes the only pike block with 4 dice consistently, other than the Urukai that are paying 15 points to do it with Berserkers.
Yes, and the Berserker gets +1 strength, +1 defense for another 4 points.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a bunch of courage, but the courage itself is not as valuable as that.
Exactly.
But yes, exactly. Especially when you compare them to, like, the next step up, the Urukai Berserker. For, 4 points less, you're losing a point of strength and a couple points of courage.
Yes.
But that's not what you need. You're also getting throwing weapons.
Yeah.
And you're getting this crazy mobility and attacking over barriers. Like, it doesn't seem that impactful, but over the course of a game, it can add up really quickly. Like,
And
getting a
that's the thing.
couple of cheeky charges your opponent wasn't ready for, getting kills over barriers your opponent wasn't ready for. It adds up. And also unyielding combat stance, they can just tank cap charges.
Or not tank
Cap charges, but
they're defense 4, and it's only a 4+ ascend.
But they're a lot better at tanking them than other models would be of a similar quality.
That's the thing. The amount of times I've seen cavalry models charge this profile, 2 of them in particular, and usually just outright lose the fight because it's 4 dice against their 2. But even when the cavalry model wins the fight, 1 or sometimes even both of them stay on their feet. So the cavalry model only actually gets 2 dice, not 4, to try and kill
even
these models.
heroes, it makes a big difference.
Yes.
Like a mounted captain-ish hero going from 6 dice to 3 dice against these guys means suddenly you're losing a lot less points per fight.
Yes. And that's the real trade that makes these guys good. It's the, 4+ to stay on your feet when you charge. 4+ to jump over a wall and keep going full tilt at your enemy. Like, there are so many cheeky things that make this model cool and flavorful and builds into the Easterling list in a way that turns it from just this big block of troops and the heroes do 90% of the work to now suddenly the Acolytes actually break up those formations.
They're pitching in, unlike the actual guys.
Yes, and those pikes that you're paying 8 points for, sometimes 9 of them in the pike and shield, are suddenly actually doing work because they're fight 4 built in, because the Acolyte is at the front, and then you also have 4 dice or 5 of banners nearby rolling into every single fight you're a part of. It's so difficult to consistently get fights winning against 5 dice, even if you're the elf higher fight list. Like, you do just lose a lot,
especially with
fights.
a couple of cheeky throwing knives picking guys off, and then the guy gets into the back line. And
that's the thing, right? How do you deal with like 6 Dragon Cult Acolytes with pikes behind them, and then Amdur, and then Khamul?
The downside is that they are D4. This list can melt. If you're going heavy on the Acolytes, you have to play aggressive and fast.
Yes.
The same as we've talked about with the other heroes. It plays into the style of this list. You got to pick off the big heroes that can make a big dent in them quickly, and then you just have to get them in the fights before they get gunned down by strength 2 boys because they're only D4. But if you can do that, if you can make use of their strengths and maximize them, I think they're excellent. I just love this profile.
Yes. Oh man, imagine if there was a way to make them move 12 inches a turn for 2 turns in a row.
If only.
Yeah, it'd be crazy.
Or even just 9 for free every turn.
Yeah.
You're crazy. Wouldn't that be great?
It'd be nice.
Yeah. And with that, we've covered all the profiles.
Yes. All right. We shall see you guys in the allies and lists.
Everybody, welcome back to the allies and lists. So we're starting out with the allies. We've got Mordor and Khand as our green options, and they're a nice way to sort of make up for the weaknesses of the low hitting power of our troops.
Yeah.
Both of these armies let us bring strength 4 guys in some way. Khand get you axes that can 2-hand, and Mordor can bring Morannon orcs or other things. They can bring Landscav even if you want to take that option with Morgul Knights.
Yeah.
A lot of different neat ways to sort of, if you want to go for a less hero hammery focused list, maybe you want to bring like Amdur 15 guys and then ally in a bunch of Mordor. That's a neat way to run it. Or Khand. Yeah. We've got a Khand and Easterling list coming up later. We're going to talk about. That's really interesting.
I really, really love the idea of, and I've done this quite a few times actually, where you bring Amdur and a War Priest from the Easterling side of things, and you bring roughly about 500 points of them, and you bring basically Khamul from the Mordor army list with 15 Black Numenorians. And so you get the Terror line that is Fight 4 already, and so you don't have to buy any Black Dragons. That's what I love doing when it comes to allies and that sort of stuff. It's a really easy way to do it as well. And it means you keep to the all-men aesthetic, you keep to the human, quote-unquote, forces of evil, and you get Fight 4, and you get Terror, and you get everything you want, basically.
Another approach that I've seen that is quite common is bringing a lot of Easterling pikes, bringing like a row of Black Dragons, and then frontlining with a bunch of Morannon Orcs.
Yeah.
Morannon Orcs Daxes go to Strength 5, they can crack through Dwarves. You know, a Strength 4 base, they can crack through any D6 Shield Wall kind of deal, like a Gondorian troop line kind of deal.
And I think if you're doing it that way, the important thing to do is to mix in a couple of maces, so you can do knockdowns to break up enemy shield walls and thick lines as well. And so, in that sort of circumstance, it means instead of doing one Strength 5 or Strength 4 attack and a couple of Strength 3s, you just get 4 Strength 3s. And it means for next turn, you can move that mace off to a different fight and bring an axe into that fight and go for the piercing kill on that fight. It just means you have a lot more flexibility in how you do it, especially if you're doing something like Gothmog on the leading side of that force and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting options, I think, for allying. There's some yellows that can be interesting. You know, Moria's like yellow with everything in evil for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do with that, but you know. Amdur is a solid addition to our list, I think, as well. We talked about how great he is as a hero killer, and the Easterling army bonus isn't that important. Like, if you bring this in another army with a low impact army bonus that are yellow, cool, go for it. I think that's an interesting way. If you have some interesting ideas, go for it.
Yeah, I think, ironically enough, goblins could actually be a really powerful ally with them, just because of how much of a tool Amdur and a couple of Dragon Knights in a list like goblins can be. Because you're not necessarily there with the goblins to try and win fights and that sort of stuff a huge amount based off of, you know, the way pike blocks want to be winning fights.
Yeah.
Goblins are there to win fights because they have 1,500 goblins to every elf that you bring, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're meant to swarm.
Yeah, and like a cheap little 200 to 300 ally contingent from most army lists in the game, when you're doing that alongside Moria, just works really well. And especially if you're willing to commit with a dragon or something big like that. Like I've seen, especially in the past before the allies metrics changed with an FAQ that happened about a year and a half, 2 years ago. All the time, I'd see dragon with fly and worm tongue, and then an Easterling army. And things like that happened all the time.
The dragon, fortitude or valor?
Valor.
Yeah, so you can bring it still.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed.
But it just means that, like, so often you'd see that or a drake. Basically, now you have to see the
dragon. Now you have to see the dragon. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But it's just a cool idea.
Yeah,
right?
that's a neat option. I like that quite a lot. Getting that magic in a different magic monster in different kind, though, a much heavier hitting one, a much bigger one than a Khamul.
Yes. So a list that I saw in the past, which I thought was awesome, was literally just 3 cave drakes allied in. That's a list you can't do anymore, for example.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But regardless, let's
get into my hot take of this episode. The Acolytes are good, actually, list.
So you didn't say it with the voice. Say it again. Come
on. Acolytes are good, actually.
Yeah, the voice, you know.
Alright, so we got Amdur, the Lord of Blades, on his armored horse, with 5 Acolytes, 5 Easterling Warriors with pikes, 3 Eastlings with bow, 1 Easterling Kataphract Black Dragon, and 1 Easterling Kataphract with a drum. Boom, boom, boom. We go fast.
Yes.
Khamul the Easterling on a horse. So no fell beast here, just the horse. This is quite a elite troops doing work army, because we've got another 5 Acolytes, another 6 Eastlings with pikes, 1 Easterling with bow, 1 Easterling with banner. So we've got 2 banner effects at 3 inches in this list, so you can spread them out quite effectively. I really like having that in my lists. Yeah. And then a Easterling War Priest on horse with 4 Acolytes and 2 Easterling Warriors with pikes and shields. We have 6 might in this list, so quite low by most standards. 37 models, which is pretty solid considering that there's a lot of 2-attack elite guys in this list. A decent defense value across the army, and 4 bows. Now, stuff that's downside-ish, we're going full aggression, so no shields. Waste the points. We're gonna kill people. We're not. Listen, if your pikes are getting hit here, you've probably lost the game. It's all gone wrong. In this list, you're not really. And let's talk about some other things you can do. So, the acolyte count is quite high. This isn't meant to play as a pike wall necessarily, but you kind of have options because of the way acolytes can maneuver around the board, and because of that drum. Sending like half your acolytes with a pike block behind them into the center, and then running a bunch around the flanks, trying to get jumps, trying to throw knives into the rear, I think is a really solid way to approach going in. And because you have 2 banner effects, one on Amdur and one on the banner, splitting your forces like that is totally viable.
Yes.
You can either keep Amdur in the center with the big block and then have your banner go with the flanking force, or have Amdur be the flank and then the banner stick with the main force. Either way, you've got Khamul on a horse, so he's not quite as killy, but he's there to set up for Amdur and the War Priest to go for kills, and then clean up a couple of trips in the back line, maybe going for like a heroic to assist Amdur, go for, those, lowered, like, if it's a fight 4 or fight 5 captain, you can go in, pop his will on the fight value, go to 6, and then just go for, a cheeky kill, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really complex mechanics and tactics that kind of overlap each other in a really, really subtle way. And I think looking in on this list, you kind of just don't see how it works. But actually playing this list and experiencing the other side of the table against a list like this, that's where this list is really going to show itself, whether it's being piloted by okay, good, great, or phenomenal player. And I think this sort of list plays very similar to how a lot of Harad style lists want to be playing, picking you apart and using either multiple attacks or just high strength attacks or lances to actually do the coup de grace. I think those Acolytes are the phenomenal pieces in that, especially with the way they can jump over barriers, especially the way they ignore so many key defensive tools that other armies want to utilize, that being terrain and picket fences, which are uncomfortably common in a lot of tournament scenes. And I think having Khamul on a horse is actually a really, really smart move in this list. It basically means you get 4 extra models, and going from 33 to 37 models is a big deal.
Yeah, you're getting to an actual, almost, not quite a horde, but not too elite, this is noticeably higher than, an Rivendell list would get.
Yes.
And the fact that you have 2 attacks across more than half the models in this army, you actually have a lot of dice to fight with.
Yeah.
You have 14 Acolytes. That's 28 dice before you even factor in getting spears in.
Or banners.
And 2 dice models are really nice with banners, because if you manage to pair into 1v1s, they're 3 dice to 2. And
yes.
That's great. It's great.
I've mentioned it a few times now, but an Acolyte with 2 pikes and a banner, 5 dice.
Crazy. Yeah, if you can get a turn where you get a lot of really favorable fights, you can really quickly just, one turn where you chew up a bunch of dudes and then you set up a model advantage for yourself, and you've got model and dice advantage, built in as well.
Yeah, 100%. I reckon you should drop one of your 2 shields and give a pike to that banner model.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I reckon that's something you could change around, although it is semantics.
I was just sort of running through quick, but yes, that's probably right. There's no reason not to do that. You don't want your banner in fights.
How many do you have?
Contribute +1 dice.
You have 5, 11...
It's about the same as the...
13 pikes, okay.
It's a low pike count. The list plays more around flanking and going wide with the Acolytes, trying to make use of that secondary banner, trying to make use of Amdur to get picks with Khamul.
Yeah.
It's not a pike block list.
But even if you get that one turn, like you said, where let's say you only get 10 of those pikes, so 5 combats where you get 5 dice in one turn. Holy heck, you're doing.
Well, that's a great thing, because against non-shooting lists, is where you can sort of even play a kiting game with this list.
Yes.
Because you have 14 throwing knives.
And you have a drum every turn.
That's the great thing, yes. You can choose to take your opponent somewhere where you can actually use pikes for a couple of turns, where you have a bunch of Acolytes in the flank harassing with throwing knives, maybe sitting behind a wall, waiting for them to commit, and then they jump over and come for the flank and just...
Yes. And you even have a ringlet as well. You have one of the best assassin-style models in the game, because they have access to magic, and they have access to killing power, because Khamul has strike. Amdur has strike. The War Priest is going to super buff the War Priest himself up and go for the kill itself. There's so many cool things.
Another great thing you can do actually is to put, if it's a fight 4 captain, for example, or a fight 4 model is transfixed.
Ballistic missile and Acolyte.
It's not actually a bad idea. I was going to say use Khamul's will to up his attacks, and then put the Blade Wrath on him.
Yeah.
To give him actual solid killing power, and then if he gets out, 3 wounds on a captain, nice, he gets back the will he burned to get the compelled, all that, whatever.
Exactly, right? And so suddenly this list is functioning in so many cheeky ways, and I think Khamul is the most important part of this list when it comes to piecing it all together. And I think the way that you can utilize Khamul from, magic, even just something as simple as Drain Courage a couple of turns, to then, go in for those kills and force the break on your opponent. Like, the amount of times I've seen ring rates force heroes to flee the table when the army breaks because they did 2 Drain Courages and just ignored them the rest of the game. Like, there are so many good things you can do with Khamul, and having that second sub-caster being the War Priest, like, suddenly your magic is actually quite powerful. And with the War Priest spell being a 2+ and something your opponent can't resist, it means you have some incredibly reliable, consistent damage that can come out whenever you need it to.
Another neat thing you can do with this list is do like a sort of hit and run. You go in, hit hard for that one turn where you pike up a bunch of acolytes, and then just sound the drum.
Yeah.
If you have priority, you just sound the drum, and if they call a move off to take you, you can keep fighting, but if they don't, you just walk away 9 inches. And you pull them out of line, and you throw a bunch of knives at them when they walk at you again.
Yeah, the only caveat to that, however, is if you call the drum and you lose a move off or something like that, every single model can't charge.
No, because it's when you move the drum, isn't it?
No.
Oh, the drum
you declare the drum before heroics are called, and it is in effect. You either gain the march effects army-wide within 12 inches of the drum, or you don't. You can't turn it off, unfortunately.
Okay, makes sense. So, that is an issue, yes, you're correct.
Slight downside, but not the end of the world.
Alright, well, let's get on to our next list.
Yes, the Steps of the East list. So this is a list that, previously to the podcast, Eric, he has written this list. So this list is an allied list with the Khandish King. So it includes a Khand allied to the army. So you have a Khandish King on a chariot, leading 4 Khandish warriors with axe, 8 Khandish horsemen, and 1 Khandish charioteer with a weapon swap for a bow. So you have in the second warband, Khamul on a fell beast, leading 2 Black Dragon warriors with pike and shield, and 5 Black Dragon warriors with just a shield. You then have in your final warband, Amdur, the Lord of Blades with an armored horse, 2 Black Dragon warriors with pike and shield, and 5 Black Dragon warriors with shield. The list has 7 might, it's got 30 models, and is 9 bows. It is an incredibly punchy army, considering we're playing an Easterlings force without any Dragon Knights.
But there are some very killy heroes here, and again, the Khand bring in a bunch of killing power.
Yeah.
In a really interesting way. With the Khandish warriors, and you put a bunch of pikes behind them, and you just watch them 2-hand, piercing strike, and just go to town on force to wound, Gondorians.
So for those who aren't familiar with Khand, their big gimmick is 1.5 strength 4 axes. And so suddenly...
Strength 3 base, strength 4 with piercing.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize, yes.
But you always pierce.
In my opinion, like, if you're going for the big plays, they're strength 4, right?
Yes.
And on a horse, you have relative safety if you have a banner effect behind you. Another important thing to actually quickly bring up, the Khandish King counts as a banner the same way Amdur does, only for the Khand.
Within 6 inches, though, which is very nice.
Yes. So Amdur is a banner for the Easterling side of the list, and the Khandish King is a banner for the Khand side of the list. And so suddenly your Khandish horsemen are rocking out 3 dice, essentially when you're charging, because 2 and a banner, and that suddenly gives you the safety to piercing strike. And sometimes even 2-hand if you're really going for it. I think you should try to 2-hand every time you have 2 horsemen in one fight. 1 2-hands, 1 doesn't, basically. And it means that your killing power in this list can be sustained with your cavalry really, really easily. And the cavalry does include the 3 heroes as well. And so I think that's where this list really shines. The interesting part about it is you have 4 Khandish warriors with axes who basically become the front line of your Black Dragon pike line. And so suddenly you have quite a significant amount of damage that can come out. Obviously it's only 4 pikes, but it's enough to actually mean that you can either do 4 single spear spots to get fight 4 with those Khandish warriors, or you can double up on a couple of pikes. And interestingly, there's quite a lot of just Black Dragon warriors with shield. The reason why Eric has done this is so he can basically 2 dice shield, 3 dice of Amdurs nearby, as many fights as he can. His aim at the end of a game is to literally have 0 kills on a Black Dragon warrior with shield. They have the fight 4 to win the fight, and they have a shield to win the fight.
Yeah, the main reason he's bringing them all that way is also for the courage value, going up to 4. It just means they have a lot of sticking power later into the game. And that is an interesting way to run it. I find that very interesting. I think personally I probably wouldn't bring as many Black Dragons, but he's also had a bunch of experience. I mean, Eric also very highly values Warhorns.
Yeah.
Which I think probably plays into him, picking the Warhorn upgrade on every model. I mean, that's basically what it is, right?
But it's definitely...
If you think about it that way.
It is. And like with a 30 model count in total, bringing a Warhorn would actually... Obviously, you can't do it in these armies, but bringing a Warhorn would actually drop your model count lower.
Yes,
so
it would be
paying
more
1 point for the...
Yeah, it would be more expensive to actually bring a Warhorn model for model than it would be just to bring everyone as a Black Dragon.
Yes.
But yes, that is an interesting point. It does give them a lot of sticking power, gives them a good ability to deal with terror walls. And yeah, I think it's an interesting list. It's all about the three heroes getting the kills. The Fell Beast, the Chariot, and Amdur just popping. And you've got also one Khand Chariot here as well.
Yeah, and it's like those four heroes, sorry, 3 heroes even, draw the attention of almost all of the punching power of your opponent's list. Because if you, as the opponent, leave a Fell Beast unchecked, and a Khandish King on a Chariot unchecked, and Amdur unchecked, even for just 2 turns, you could just break. Like, their damage output is actually that high. The Khandish King on Chariot has a ludicrous amount of killing power when he's charged again, and the Chariot actually provides a significant amount of safety to him as well. The impact hits is negligible, in my opinion. I view it much like a Khamul's impact hits. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, boo-hoo.
2 strength 4s, correct?
2 strength 3s.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, strength 4. Let's do a fact check.
There, here we go.
God. Strength 4, 2 strength 4.
It is 2 strength 4s. Okay.
I mean, I think the biggest use for it is just knocking people off their horses. Same as the camel.
And I think that's it, right? And like Eric and myself and a couple of other people in our community kind of all worked on this list together, crafting it into as sharp of a blade as we can. I know I played probably the better part of 20 games against various forms of this list, the Khand Easterling allies, and we agreed that the one Khandish Charioteer is there to dismount Imrahil. Is there to dismount, insert big, multi-attack, powerful hero on a horse. They're there to die to that model after they knock them off the horse, and that's it. And I think it's really, really, really cool to see how this army actually, although it looks like a very small army, although it looks like quite a low model count, 30 models is very low, the amount of space they occupy, because they have 3 huge bases, 2 chariots and a Fell Beast. And then they have another, 9? Yeah, another 9 cavalry bases. And then they have the infantry that also want to spread out quite a bit and just shield. You do have a lot of things that can just kind of occupy 15, 20 inches of a front line and just sit in the way for long enough.
Yeah, I think it's solid. Now, let's go into 20 in 1, your list. So,
yes.
I'll run us through this real quick. Amdur, the Lord of Blades on a horse with 2 Cataphract Black Dragons with axe, weapon swaps, and shield. I'm just going to refer to them as 2 Black Dragons from now on.
Yep.
1 Cataphract with a War Drum and shield, 1 with a axe swap, so not a Black Dragon. Another 2 Cataphracts with axes, 1 Cataphract with banner and shield. And then we've got 3 Dragon Knights, each bringing 3 Cataphract Black Dragons. 4, 11 might, 21 models, 0 bows. So you get a solid 750 again.
Okay, so here's my question. Why do you need a bow if you move 20 inches in one turn and then move off with the opponent the next?
You don't.
Exactly. This is an army, I've done it before. It's such a fun game. If you don't like running this level model count, obviously you can drop one of the Dragon Knights and just bring 80 more points of troops. I would encourage you to bring more cavalry. You could probably do a second banner and kind of run around a banner with each of the Dragon Knights and then Amdur being his own banner. You could do it that way. I've also seen swaps for the captain to be swapped out for a
War Priest?
A War Priest, exactly that. I didn't do that because I love the idea of basically if you go first, you call a move and the drum, and you park your army basically right in front of your opponent, right? If it's an objective-based game, you park all of your Kataphrakts right in front of the opponent, literally in charge range, 4 inches away, and you stand a hero on each objective, and you hope they charge and end the game. And if it's you moving second, you still call the march and the war drum, because you want to be able to see where your opponent moves and have 20 inches worth of reaction. Whether your opponent moves forward, backwards, left, or right, you will be moving almost 100% of the time, at least, in my opinion, 5-6 7 inches quicker than your opponent. There are very, very few armies in the game that will be keeping up with the movement this army can do for more than 1 or 2 turns. Ugluk Scouts is known as being one of the quickest armies in the game at the moment. They move 14 inches a turn with the drum and marchers. We get 6 extra inches of movement on top of that every time we do it. I think this army is so much fun to play, and it really helps you understand the power of the heroes in this list.
Yeah, I think it's really neat. I think that going very hero heavy with the triple Dragon Knight is a very interesting way to play. It can be very swingy, it can be very risky, but it's also very powerful potentially.
I don't think it's swingy at all.
That's because you're really good at rolling 6s, though.
That's true. Yeah, I have a 92% rolling a 6 rate when it comes to one-on-one combat, so... But that's okay.
Well, I mean, 4 dice with a banner has got a good odd to roll 6.
Yes, and that's the thing.
The tough part is when you hit higher fight heroes or higher fight armies, or even tough armies to crack.
Yeah, this army does not want to play dwarves.
Good luck getting through a bunch of Grimhammers.
Yes. In saying that, though, there is one other thing I think we should talk about, and that is the weapon swaps.
Yeah, get on it. Why are we doing axes, and why is it funny?
Okay, so the idea of this weapon swap to an axe is that if you maintain your shield wall rules, the Gleaming Horde, and are piercing striking, your worst possible result is defense 4 instead of defense 3. If you're fighting a defense 3 army,
Strength 3.
Strength 3 army, sorry, thank you, that is actually quite a big deal. It means you stay on 5s to wound no matter what, and being at defense 7 means you even have a chance to stay at 6s to wound. And the trade of that is that you just get a better killing stat. Obviously, axes won't always be relevant, but I think they're a heck of a lot more relevant than fainting would be with a cavalry list like this. And so the idea is the axe, whilst doesn't always work like this, basically works as a some of the time powerful lance bonus, right?
It works well because a lot of armies, well, you'll either have something, you always have something to hit, because most armies' heroes will be 1 higher.
Yeah.
So, but most common defense points for tanky armies is D6.
Yes.
And obviously dwarves hit D7. Some shield walls can be D7, but you're knocking them prone, so a lot of the time they won't get it. And that means that, I mean, D5 and D4, you know, you might not be great at killing, but you can kill D4 and D5. 5s to win with 4 dice is okay. It's not great. You know, if you were Gondorian, you'd be on 4s instead of 5s, which is way better.
Yeah.
But being able to go to 5s against D6 is just really nice instead of 6s.
Yes.
Because it's just a common thing to deal with when it comes to tougher armies.
Yeah. And even against D5, like, this army loves fighting orcs, basically.
Yeah, basically. It means you can... The big weakness we were talking about is less pronounced when you're fighting D5 armies.
Basically, yes. The only caveat to that is you have the unfortunate downside of a piercing strike when you lose a fight. So my advice is don't lose.
Yeah, if you just roll 6s and your opponent doesn't...
It's always a benefit.
Always a benefit,
yep.
yeah.
Exactly that. Alrighty, shall we jump into our final thoughts?
Final conclusions.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris, with Easterlings as an army?
Easterlings as an army, I think this has been one of the armies I've loved the most growing up. It's an army that, looking at it and playing against it, even from when I started playing this game at like 8-9 years old, when it was only like the old metal sculpts that were there basically for scenarios and the odd game or two, someone would chuck a few in. It was just a unit that added variety, it added spice, it added intrigue to the game as a whole. And I think this army list has really tripled down on a particular playstyle, that being damage, 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 and heroes killing heroes. And I think that is something that is sorely missed in the Forces of Good. There aren't many hero-centric armies that want to be aiming at heroes. I think armies like Rohan want to be sniping out and charging down infantry. They want to do the, you know, they call Death and the Big Legendary Legion, and they try to kill 20 models in a turn sort of thing. They don't want to actually go into a lot of heroes that often. This army excels at doing exactly that, and I wish there was an equivalent style of army for the Forces of Good.
I'll make something happen with hobbits.
Oh yeah? With hobbits, really?
I'll take out your dragon out with my hobbits.
You know, the problem is, I actually think hobbits would probably beat my old cav list, because it's going to be 180 models against 20.
You're all going prone to my hobbits.
Although, piercing strike will make a difference.
No, it's only when making strikes.
Hmm?
It's when making strikes that your strength goes up. It doesn't actually increase your strength value.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, your defense too, aren't you?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the hammers knocking you prone. No. I might be detailed actually. Listen, we'll talk about this later. Easterlings, we're talking about Easterlings. Okay, well, besides the fact that hobbits would beat them in a war, in real life.
Objective facts right there.
Besides that fact, I think they're a neat army. They have some clear weaknesses. I think if you try to play around the basic warrior, you're going to feel like you're playing discount garbage bin Gondor a lot of the time, realistically. Same with the Cav. If you play around the Cav and you don't do anything cheeky like bringing triple dragon knights with axes on everyone, you're going to feel like, wow, I wish I was just a Gondorian with a lance.
Yes.
But if you either play with the Acolytes and you go for the full memes, you're just jumping over everything, throwing knives left and right, going crazy with that, or if you go for the crazy hero hammer-centric focus like we've seen here, or if you play with that Khand list or a really neat mix of troops, there are unique and interesting things you can do with Eastlings while maintaining, pretty decent strength level in terms. I don't think they're ever going to be a top army because there's something inherently unreliable in relying on, your heroes to just go off every game.
Yes.
There's an inherent unreliability to that unless that hero is insanely consistently strong. And while these heroes are very powerful for their points cost, they're not Bolg, Azog, Boromir, Imrahil, whatever, that level of killing power or consistency.
I think the actual quote-unquote weakness army, or bad matchup, if you will, the gatekeeper, however you want to describe that, is an elf army. Into disguise.
Yeah, it's not good.
So I'm someone who plays a lot of Lothlorien, and whenever I look at an Easterling matchup into Lothlorien, I'm just ecstatic, right? I'm licking my lips, ready to just mow through them with Fight 6.
Yeah, it's great. My Easterling Knights charge you, and then I have to call a strike to fight your basic guys because they have pikes behind them that make them fight 6.
Yeah, and even then, it's like you could just not roll a 6 and have to burn your final point of might to then stay alive one turn.
And because I have to get so many kills to make up for it, I have to go into 4 dice every time, and going into 4 dice is just scary.
Yes.
You're going to dismount me, probably, realistically, and then I'm on foot. Now I've lost half my killing power.
Yes, and I think Thranduil's Hall probably does an even better
Thranduil's
job.
Hall would do something similar, so would Gilgalad list with a bunch of Kingsguard.
Yes.
Any list like that. And even Fight 5 lists get tricky. Your Dragon Knight's going into something like a Dol Amroth Pikeman block.
Even just Gondor with Boromir.
Yeah, Gondor with Boromir. It's a Ranger and a Gondorian, and you're like, do I call a strike right now?
Because you have 0 fate.
Yeah.
You actually could just die.
Even just dismounting is so huge. It's like, you lose so much.
Nah, go big or go home. Go for the kill every time.
Go for the combat, yeah. You kind of have to, though. That's the thing, though. You laugh, but you kind of have to because of the way this list is forcing you to play.
Do you know what you should have done? I should have done this with my last list. Okay, so go back to the other list, right? I paid 14 points for axes. Scratch that. Drop 1 more Black Dragon upgrade, so I have 16 points spare. Have 1 axe swap, and then all 3 of my Dragon Knights have axe weapon swaps. That's the actual hidden key. Because you have to go big or go home, so you piercing strike combat every single fight.
You know what's great though? Because you have 2 swords, you swap 1 to an axe, you can both feint and piercing strike.
Imagine if you do it on the same turn. That'd be so good.
That's illegal.
If only.
Well, just don't tell your opponent it's legal.
Dude, I'd drop to fight 2 if I could do both. That's worth it.
Okay, and with that, I think we've run out of constructive things to say today. I think we've just gone off the rails with the hobbits and the axes and hobbits with axes. Jesus.
All right, what about point swaps for whips?
Can we just stop now? Anyway, thank you all for listening. While we go off on this tirade, it'd be great if you hit the subscribe button down below so you can listen to more of these interesting conversations we have at the end. And if you've stuck through this far, you're probably going as insane as we are.
Yep, and it's totally worth it. Like Alexa said, 100%. If this is content you like, if this is content you want to see more of, a like, comment, subscribe, hitting the notification bell, those are all things that would help us quite substantially. We would love to hear feedback. We'd love to hear the things you love, the things you hate, what army to do next, why I'm obsessed with whips. I'll happily tell you if you ask me about it. There's many things we'd love to chat with you guys about, and we love doing this content. So if this is something you enjoy, please do what you want with it. If you want to support us, awesome. If you don't, and listening is all you want to do, even just that privilege is something that we highly value. And with that, have a lovely day.
Thank you for listening.